She walked in unnoticed, dressed in clothes that hid her wealth. To the world, she looked like any other customer, a tired woman craving a simple meal. But beneath the disguise was a millionaire, used to being admired, respected, even feared. Tonight, she wanted to see how people treated her when money wasn't on display. What she didn't expect was the black waiter who would serve her table, a man carrying not just plates but an unshakable truth. By the end of the night, his message would silence the restaurant and leave her questioning everything she thought she knew. The restaurant gleamed with elegance. Crystal glasses sparkled beneath chandeliers, and every table was draped in white linen. It was the kind of place where the wealthy gathered, expecting flawless service. Yet tonight, among the pearls, tailored suits, and designer bags, sat a woman dressed simply in jeans and a plain blouse. Nobody guessed that she owned more wealth than half the room combined. She had come for more than dinner. Her life was filled with privilege. Drivers at her door, assistants at her call, and respect earned not by character, but by the shadow of her fortune. It was easy to forget what life looked like without that shield. So she disguised herself, walking into the restaurant like an ordinary woman. Her order was simple, a steak. But the service that followed would prove far from ordinary. At her table arrived a black waiter, tall and composed, his uniform pressed neatly, his expression calm. To most, he was invisible, another server blending into the background of wealth and laughter. But there was something in his eyes that suggested he carried more than plates, something deeper. She didn't notice it at first. She was focused on testing the world's reactions, curious whether she'd be treated differently without her name, her fortune, or her reputation. What she didn't realize was that she wasn't the one doing the testing. By the end of the night, it would be her who was being measured, her character, her humanity, her heart. At first, everything seemed ordinary. The waiter approached with quiet professionalism, placing her water glass gently on the table, pulling out his notepad and writing down her order. Yet she noticed something. His politeness was different. It wasn't forced, nor was it the shallow courtesy she often received from those hoping for a generous tip. His movements carried dignity, as though every gesture was a statement. "I am more than this uniform." She observed him closely. He greeted guests with the same warmth, yet she noticed how some responded differently. A couple at the next table ignored his eye contact, speaking about him as though he weren't there. Another man sighed impatiently, as if waiting on service from a black waiter was beneath him. The millionaire noticed these moments but dismissed them at first. She was focused on her own experiment, curious whether her disguise would alter the way she was served. But slowly she realized the real story unfolding wasn't about her. It was about him. When her steak arrived, the room's tension was rising in ways she hadn't expected. The waiter placed her meal carefully, his movements smooth, his presence quiet but commanding. And then, almost as if fate orchestrated the moment, a small group across the room laughed too loudly. Their words carried, mocking his voice, his appearance, the color of his skin. She froze. Normally, as a millionaire in her true form, she would never witness this side of the world. People feared her influence, her money. Racism disguised itself in her presence. But now, dressed in simplicity, she was just another observer, and what she saw unsettled her. The waiter did not react outwardly. He continued serving, his face calm, though his eyes carried a storm. Each step he took, each plate he set down felt heavier, as though he bore centuries of silence on his shoulders. And then he returned to her table. He stood tall, his gaze steady, his hands folded politely before him. For the first time, she noticed the quiet power in his stance. He wasn't just a waiter. He was a man carrying a message the world needed to hear. The room quieted, as if sensing something was about to happen. The air shifted. Conversation slowed, laughter softened. Forks and knives clinked faintly but without rhythm. All eyes seemed to drift toward the man standing by her table. She looked up, steak untouched, and saw it, an unwavering expression, carved from years of endurance. His presence alone commanded attention, and then, with a voice steady and clear, he spoke, not to her alone, but to everyone listening. His words weren't loud, yet they struck with the force of truth. He reminded the room of something people pretended not to see. That dignity does not come from wealth. That worth is not measured by the color of one's skin, and that silence in the face of disrespect only fuels its fire. The restaurant froze. The group that had mocked him stared down at their plates, suddenly stripped of their arrogance. The chatter that once filled the room vanished, replaced by a silence so sharp it almost rang in the air. The millionaire's disguise suddenly felt meaningless. Here she was, a woman who thought she held the power of the room in her hidden wealth. Yet it was this man, this so-called ordinary, waiter who silenced everyone with nothing but truth. For the first time in years, she felt small, not because she lacked money or status, but because she realized how blind she had been. When the night ended, she left the restaurant quietly. No announcement of her wealth, no grand gesture, no reveal of who she truly was. She slipped into the night carrying not pride, but reflection. The waiter's message lingered in her mind like an echo. Dignity, respect, humanity. She realized that her disguise had shown her something. Money had long shielded her from the raw truth of prejudice, endured not in headlines or speeches, but in quiet moments of everyday life. Back in her mansion, surrounded by luxury, she couldn't shake the silence of that restaurant. For once, it wasn't her money, her name, or her power that mattered. It was his voice, his courage, his truth, and perhaps that was the lesson. That real wealth isn't measured in millions, but in the power of standing tall when the world tries to keep you small. This story may have ended in one restaurant, on one quiet night, but the reality it revealed continues far beyond its walls. How many more voices will go unheard? How many more truths will be silenced?